Chapter 2, Section 7 is all about percent of change. So before we get too far into the notes, I want to go over some vocabulary words that you are going to need to be familiar with, just because they get talked about and used a lot in the problems that we're going to see. The first thing we're going to focus on is percent of change, which is a ratio that compares the change in quantity to the original amount. So percent of change would be something used to describe maybe how sales have either increased or decreased from one year to another year, salary being changed, attendance at a sporting event, those kind of things that we can represent with it increased by 5% or it decreased by 2% or something like that. And that's when we'll use percent of change to represent those types of situations. Then we also have discount. Discount would be the amount by which an original price is reduced. And then we'll also talk about selling price, which is what the customer pays for the item. And in that, we'll get into how to calculate like sales tax. So the first thing I want to go over is that percent of change, and you are going to use this equation here. So in your notes, I would maybe box this up, put a star by it, highlight it like I'm doing right now, just so that you know this is what you're going to want to use to set up those percent of change equations. So what you're going to have to find is the amount of change. And in order to do that, we're going to follow the steps kind of down here. You're going to take the newest or like the most recent, the last amount that they give you, and subtract the original amount. Then after you get that figured out, that would go in for your amount of change. You're going to put that over the original amount that you started with, and then you're going to set it equal to percent of change, or a lot of times that's where your variable is going to go, like X, and put it over 100. Now when you solve it, again, we're going to be using cross products to solve these types of problems. If you get a positive answer, that would tell you that it had a percent of increase. If you get a negative answer, that tells you that it had a percent of decrease. For example, the high today is predicted to be 21 degrees, and the high tomorrow is supposed to be 4 degrees. What is the percent of change? So we start by finding the amount of change. So I take my newest temperature, 4 degrees, and I subtract the original temperature, which was 21, and I got negative 17. So the negative 17 would be the amount of change. So that goes on top of the first fraction. And you put it over the original amount, or in this problem, the original temperature, which is 21. And then you set that equal to X over 100. X is representing that percent of change that we're trying to solve for. Once you've got this set up, then you cross multiply. So that negative 17 times 100 is how they got that negative 1,700 equals that 21x. Now to get x by itself, you're dealing with a one-step equation here. You're going to divide both sides by that 21, and you get negative 81 for your x. Since it's a decrease, or a negative amount, that tells you that it would be a decrease, so the percent of decrease, or the percent that the temperature has gone down, would be by 81%. So let's turn the page and take a look at this first practice problem together, and then you guys can try the second practice problem on your own. So this one says that Jasmine had 14 pairs of shoes. Now she has 19 pairs of shoes. What is the percent of change? Label it as an increase or a decrease. So the first thing I would do is find my amount of change. So to do that, we're going to start by taking her newest amount, which is 19, and subtract her old amount of shoes, which is 14. So that gives us a change of 5. So to set up our proportion, we put that amount of change, 5, over her original number of pairs of shoes, which was that 14, and we set this equal to x over 100. Then we're going to cross multiply. We get 500 equals 14x. Then we're going to divide both sides by 14. And we get, if we round, 35.7, and that would be percent, and that would be an increase since it was positive. So why don't you take a minute and try to do the practice problem. So I would have started by finding the amount of change first. So I would have taken 298 and subtracted 320, which would give me negative 22. And already if you guys saw that that was negative, that maybe told you that you were going to be dealing with a percent of decrease problem. So I put negative 22 on top, because that's the amount of change, over the original attendance, which was 320, and then set that equal to x over 100. Then at this point, you guys should have cross multiplied, and you should have said 320x equals negative 2,200. Divide by 320. And that leaves us with negative 6.9%, and that would be a decrease. The next thing I want to talk about is sales tax. So sales tax is the amount of money that we have to pay extra on purchases at the store or maybe online if you're shopping. So there's two methods to finding sales tax. And going forward, when we start doing problems on your own, it does not matter which method you choose to use as long as you can execute it correctly and get the right answer. The first method is finding the amount of sales tax first. Now, the key thing to remember with these types of problems dealing with sales tax, and then in the future when we talk about discount, is they are going to be giving you numbers that are written as percentages, but you will need to change it to a decimal. So if you are given something like 7%, you need to change the percent to a decimal. To do that, you would divide by 100, and this would give you 0.07. And so then when you're actually calculating the problems, you want to make sure that you use 0.07 and not 7, because 7 would be much too big. So to solve for sales tax, the first method would be to take the selling price, what you're paying for, times your sales tax amount as a decimal. Then that will give you the amount that you have to pay extra on your purchase. So then you'll add that on to your selling price or to your original cost of the item. The second method is to take 100% plus your tax percent that you have to pay in sales tax. That'll give you a new total percent that will be over 100% there, but then you'll still write that as a decimal. Multiply that to your item cost, and that will get you the total amount that you'll have to pay without having to add on that extra sales tax amount. So, for example, a store sells a shirt for $20. Sales tax is 7%. What is the total cost of the shirt? First thing I would do is take a look at that 7%. Make sure that you convert that to a decimal, so it's 0.07. Divide it by 100. And I've got the two methods shown here. I've got the first method on the left and the second method on the right. So for the first method, you take the cost of the item, $20 for that shirt, times the 0.07. That gives you this 1.4. So that means that you're going to have to pay $1.40 extra in sales tax. So step 2 then is to take $20, the cost of the shirt, plus your sales tax amount, that 1.4, to get 21.4, which is the same as $21.40. The second method says that you would take 100 plus 7 to get a new percentage of 107%, but still we would want to make sure that we write that as a decimal, so it would be 1.07. So it looks similar to the tax that I had up above, but it just has a 1 in front. And then you take that 1.07 times the cost of the shirt, 20, and I got 21.4, which is still $21.40. Either method works and is acceptable to use. It just depends on which one you prefer, which one maybe makes more sense to you or you think is easier. Some students really like the second method because it's a little bit quicker. You don't have to add anything onto your answer. You just do one calculation and you get your answer right away. So I want to practice here using both methods. This example says that we have a store selling a bike for $420. it has a sales tax of 6.5%, which remember this would be the same thing as 0.065 as a decimal. So using the first method, we're going to take the cost of the bike, $420, and we're going to multiply that to the sales tax, 0.065. And this will give me 27.30. So $27.30 is what I have to pay extra. So then I take the cost of the bike, $420, and I add on the $27.30 to get a new total of $447.30. Now the second method, we would start by taking 100 plus that 6.5% to get a new percentage, 106.5, which again, that's the same thing as 1.065 as a decimal. Then you're going to take the cost of the bike, $420, and you're going to multiply to that 1.065, and that should get you that $447.30. On the practice problem here, I want you to choose which method you'd like to use and then try to solve this problem. So I like the second method better. So what I would have done is converted this to 107.5%, which as a decimal would be 1.075. So I took 350 times 1.075 to get a cost of $376.25. So the last thing I want to talk about is discount. Discount also has two methods just like sales tax did. So the first method is to find the amount of your discount first. Now discount would be what you are saving. So you're still going to have a percentage like 20% off, 30% off, 50% off, and you're going to want to convert that to a decimal first. So if you had 30% of a discount, that would be the same thing as 0.3 as a decimal. So the first method says that you take your original price of the item times the discount as a decimal, and then you would take that amount and subtract it from your original price because you're saving money. The second method says that instead of taking 100% plus the tax like we did with sales tax, we're going to take 100% minus the discount percent, and that'll give you what you have to still pay. So if you're saving 30% on an item, you still are responsible for paying for 70% of that item. So then you'll take that new percentage, 70% as a decimal, times the cost of your item to get the amount that you have to pay. So I've got an example worked out here, like I did with sales tax, again showing you how to use those two methods. So we have a baseball bat that is on sale for $159, and it's 25% off. The first method shows that you're taking 159 times 0.25. Again, that came from taking that percentage and writing it as a decimal. And they got 39.75. So that would be the amount that we save. So then you had to take the cost of the bat, 159, and subtract the discount amount, $39.75. And that gives you that total selling price of $119.25. Now the second method, you start by taking 100 minus that 25% to get you 75%. As a decimal, that's 0.75. So then you take the cost of your item, 159, times 0.75, and you still end up getting that $119.25. So let's practice using both methods here. A gaming system that is costing $249 is on sale for 35% off, so we want to find the sale price. Step 1 is to take your cost of your item, $249, for the first method, times 0.35, again that's 35% as a decimal. And so we're saving $87.15. So to find my cost, I take $249 and I subtract the $87.15 to get the new cost of $161.85. That's method 1. Now the second method, you start by taking 100% minus the 25, which means that we're responsible for, minus 35, which means that we're responsible for 65% of our purchase, which this as a decimal would be 0.65. Then you take the cost of the item, $249, times the 0.65, and you should still get $161.85. This next example wants you to combine the two things that you've learned. So we've got a store that's selling headphones for $49. It's on sale of 20%, and the sales tax is 7%, and they want you to find the total cost. I would start by finding your discount first, again, using whatever method you would like. I usually prefer using the second method just because I think it is faster. So I'm going to take 100% minus the 20%, which means I'm responsible for 80%, or 0.8 as a decimal. So I take the cost, 49 times 0.8. So this comes out to be $39.20. And so that's how much I'm saving, or my sale price, I should say. So $49 has been reduced to $39.20. So that's the discount. Now to find sales tax, I'm going to take that $39.20. And again, there's two methods. So you could either take it times 0.07 and then add on the sales tax, or if you want to use that second method and do 1.07 so that it already will calculate the adding on for you, this will get you $41.94. And that would be your total sale price. So I want you guys to try this practice problem. So the first thing I did was find the discount. So I took 4 for the cost of the cereal, and I did times 0.67. Again, I'm using the second method, and that got me $2.68. So even if you use the first method, you still should have gotten that the sale price is going to be $2.68. Then for the sales tax, I take that $2.68, and I took it times 1.06 for the tax, and that got me $2.84. So that would be the final cost of the box of cereal. Like I said, if you use method 1, that's fine. You should still have gotten $2.84 for your final answer. So it doesn't matter which method you use. You just have to make sure that you're following the steps correctly and appropriately. So going forward, when you guys are doing problems on your own, pick whichever method makes the most sense to you and use that as you're solving your own problems.